For our first EV versus ICE comparison, we're going to compare the Chevrolet Bolt with the Chevrolet Trailblazer. First thing I want to say is I know that the Bolt EV compares more to the Chevy Trax, but it's 2023 and we're in between model years for the Chevy Trax. There's a 2022 model and there's a 2024 model, but there's not a 2023, which means I couldn't see one at the auto show to get a good idea. But when I sat inside the Chevrolet Trailblazer at the North Texas Auto Show, the dash looked very familiar. The air conditioning vents looked very similar. And I'll go through some comparisons on dimensions such as height, width, length, and wheelbase, and explain why I chose the Trailblazer as the comparison vehicle for this video. To be fair to the Trailblazer, I'll also compare it to the Bolt EUV, which is a little bit larger version of my car. And I'll put this one in, and I'll even include a 2020 Chevy Trax for comparison. Wheelbase-wise, the Bolt EUV is 105.3 inches compared to 103.9 for the Trailblazer. So the Bolt is a little bit longer wheelbase. The Trailblazer, 173.5 inches long compared to the EUV's 169.5. So the Trailblazer's a little bit longer. The Trailblazer's a little taller, 65.2 inches compared to 63.6, and the Trailblazer's a little wider. However, the Bolt EUV has 56.9 cubic feet of cargo space compared to the Trailblazer's 54.4. The biggest difference is going to come on horsepower. The Bolt EUV and the Bolt EV, which oddly enough, the Bolt EV has the same cargo space as the EUV. All the extra space in the EUV is rear seat legroom, not cargo space. The big difference is these Bolts, with their electric motors, have 200 horsepower. The Trailblazer, in its base configuration as the LS, only has 137 horsepower. It does have a turbocharged engine, but it's a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder engine carrying a vehicle this size. So it doesn't have the horsepower. It does get 30 miles per gallon combined, according to Chevrolet's website, combining their city and highway miles. The Bolt, based off of EPA estimates, since it's real easy for me to get 4 miles per kilowatt hour on this car, and 3.9 is what it shows on its onboard computer for lifetime. If you take the EPA range of 259 miles on this car and divide it by the 65 kilowatt hour battery pack, it comes out to 3.98 miles per kilowatt hour, which is why the trips resets to 4. So I'm going to use that for my metric in determining an EV's real world efficiency based on a combination of highway and country roads. The commute that I do, this car matches its EPA. So your mileage will vary depending on your commute, but on mine it matches. 247 miles is a stated range for the EUV, and that means that it is going to have an average efficiency of 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. So take those in for the fuel considerations. The Bolt EUV, in its base 1LT trim with no packages added after destination charges, is $28,975 compared to the Trailblazer LS, which is $23,395. However, the Bolt EUV has several features standard that the Trailblazer doesn't, and to get those features to where they're more comparable, you have to step up to the Trailblazer LT trim, which is $25,595. I'm going to do this comparison with both trims just to make sure that we're covered. The Bolt EV is at $27,495, and I said I'd cover the 22 Trax, which is a little shorter wheelbase, a little bit longer, a little bit taller, and almost the same width as the Bolt, with 48.4 cubic feet of cargo and 155 horsepower and 27 miles per gallon. The Trax, the 2022 Trax, currently has a $1,000 rebate on it, so its cost comes down to $21,895. The 2024 Trax is supposed to be $21,495, but that's next year's model. So let's do a cost per month comparison, and I figured this based over a 3-year, 36,000 mile time of ownership on the car. I chose that number because that is the bumper-to-bumper warranty, and I don't want to have to research a whole lot of repair costs. At 3 years, 36,000 miles, all of these vehicles under their comparison, their repairs should be covered under warranty. And the first thing that anybody's going to say about an electric car is, well, what about when the battery quits after 36,000 miles? Well, the battery's warranted for 8 years and 100,000 miles. So I could take that out a lot longer. And in that one, you got to look into the motor and the transmission on the ICE cars as well. So I'm only looking at the first 3 years when absolutely everything on each car is covered. So that takes care of repair costs. Using an online car payment calculator, figuring a 6% interest rate on a 72-month loan, using $1,000 plus some additional fees as your down payment. Basically, the tax, $300 of the registration fees, everything above that $300 you add to your $1,000 down payment. The Bolt EUV has a monthly payment of $463.63. compared to the Trailblazer LS at $371.15, or the Trailblazer LT at $404.30. So obviously the Bolt EUV costs more. The Bolt EV $439.10, and the Trax, the 2022 Trax, $346.29. I looked up insurance quotes. I looked up insurance on Progressive and got quotes from the progressive.com website on each of these vehicles. For liability, comp, and collision for a driver my age. What I got for a monthly insurance cost on a Bolt EUV is $156.33 compared to $123.50 for the Trailblazer LS and the Trailblazer LT. Progressive makes no differentiation between the EUV and the Bolt EV, so that cost there is the same. The Trax was $129.17. Right now, the Trailblazers and the Trax are way less expensive than the Bolts. Maintenance costs comes down to not needing an oil change on this car. Take oil changes out of figuring oil changes, tire rotations, cabin air filters, windshield wipers, figuring all of that in as maintenance, adding up that cost for 3 years and then dividing it by 36 months, maintenance comes out to $8.94 a month on the Bolt EV or EUV, compared to $16.72 per month on the Trailblazers and the Trax. The big difference is fuel. The Bolt EUV at 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour at the national average currently in spring of 2023 of 15 cents per kilowatt hour is going to use $39.40 worth of electricity every month. The Trailblazer, both trims, at a combined fuel economy of 30 miles per gallon according to Chevrolet, and taking the national average for a gallon of gas of $3.47 is going to come to $122.60 per month. So, bottom line, car payment, insurance payment, fuel, and money set aside for maintenance, the Bolt EUV will be $668.30 a month, compared to $633.97 for the Trailblazer LS. Now again, you lose a lot of equipment on the Trailblazer LS that the Bolt EUV, even in the 1LT trim, is going to have standard. If you step up to the Trailblazer LT, so that the cars are a little bit more comparable in terms of equipment, now it's $667.12 for the Trailblazer. The difference between the Bolt EUV and Trailblazer LT comes down to $1 a month in favor of the Trailblazer. For that $1, you get 200 horsepower instead of 137 horsepower. For that $1 a month, you get to never stop at a gas station. People always complain to me about the time it takes to road trip a Bolt and how long you have to sit at the charger when a gas station would only take you a couple of minutes to fill up and you're good to go. But I don't road trip every day of my life. I do my work commute by far most days of my life. And it takes me 15 seconds, I've timed it, to get out of the car, get the plug off of the wall, plug in my car, and then I go in and the car charges while I'm sleeping. as opposed to having to find a gas station, which they're easy to find, I'll admit, but I still have to drive to a gas station, get out of the car, run my card, pump the gas at least once a week on my commute. That's time I get back in my life. Is that worth $1 a month? To me, absolutely. Is the horsepower worth it? Absolutely. The convenience of having a full tank, is it worth $1 a month? Yes. To me, it's worth even the $30. Now, if I compare the Bolt EV, this car that I have here, to the Trailblazer LT, the Bolt EV comes to $642. So this is going to be less money per month than the Trailblazer LT. The LS still beats it. The Trax in its base configuration is $606.58. And again, I'm going with less equipment and less horsepower. The Trax is 155 horsepower compared to the Trailblazer, but it's still less horsepower, it's still less acceleration. My preference is for this car. Your preference might be for the Trailblazer or for the Trax, but this is a comparison as detailed as I could get with my limited resources, and you can draw your own conclusion. I'll have another one of these coming up if you like this kind of analysis.